everyone, welcome back. Today I'm creating two cards using the shaving cream backgrounds that I created. This was supposed to be part of my card hoppin' groups hop for this month, and unfortunately my computer died and I wasn't able to get my video up. I'm going to start with some shaving cream, and I do have a Pyrex dish. Here I used a little bit more shaving cream. This is literally the first time that I've ever tried this process. So I laid down my shaving cream and then I added some Sparkling Rose ink from Pink Fresh Studio. I added a little bit of lemon whip, and then finally I added some bubble gum. And I'm going to take my scraper and I'm going to sweep up and down, and then I'm going to sweep horizontally. I'll clean off that scraper, and then finally I do have a shish kebab holder, so a little stick there, and I'm just going to do a little bit of swirls to get that shaving cream moving. So as I mentioned, this is my very first time trying this process. I really liked it. I like the backgrounds that I have, but I also learned a few things, and those are the things that I'd like to share with you today. So once I get this all mixed up the way that I want, I have two different types of paper here, and I'm going to apologize because I didn't get to edit this video right away, so I'm not sure which paper is which paper, but I did try this on both glossy, so kind of like a photographic gloss paper, and then I tried it again on a more solid piece of accent opaque paper. Now, you'll notice that the one on the right didn't dip all the way in as it should have. Maybe I should have put paper over the top of it and pressed it a little bit harder. I do know when I bring in some new colors that I really didn't add enough color, and I'm going to have to remedy that as I build my cards. So these are my first two, but I still had a lot of ink there, and rather than trying to rather than throwing this away, I brought in two other panels. So my panels are cut to 4 1/4 by 5.5 inches, and I just am smushing it into that mixture. Here I got a little bit more aggressive with my smushing, and I'm actually going to sweep it a little bit. So I found that it wasn't always picking up on all spots of the cardstock. So for some of these, I do a little bit of a sweeping motion, and that gives me the better coverage that I'm looking for. Having those pinks, there's that swiping right there. This is definitely accent opaque right there, because I can tell that it's a much thinner cardstock. But I liked the sweeping motion as well. You can tell that the pink and the yellow obviously gave me a little bit of a peach color, so I had the peach, the pinks, and then of course the yellows, and I really liked that color combination. This time I chose to go with a little bit less of the shaving cream, and I'm going to add some alcohol inks. And unfortunately, I don't remember what colors I used. Obviously, you can see that I have kind of a tealish blue, and then I've used a purple. I didn't swipe this time. I thought that I would just try to swirl it around and see how that went. I don't recommend it because I didn't get the coverage that I did on my first panels. You're going to see that here in just a moment. When I'm mixing it, I really can't see. I'm not standing over it, so I can't see all the white space. Maybe if I added a little bit more of the alcohol ink, I would have got better impressions. That's a piece of the glossy paper, and I did add one of my Brutus Monroe stencils over the top. And here I'm trying to use what's left on my stencil over the top of another piece of cardstock, and I'm really not going to get much of an impression from this. So you can see I have just a little bit of an impression, but not much. I got some of the stencil, but here's where it's going to show just a little bit more. So once I lifted that stencil, I'm going to add this piece of paper back in, and there you can see that I have a little bit more of the pattern. But again, this is super light, so much lighter than what I was looking for. I definitely should have done the scraping, so I should have went down vertically vertically and horizontally before I did my swirls. Here I'm going to add in a little bit of the bubblegum ink because I noticed that I had too much white space. And I'm just going to swirl this all in, and I'll come in with another piece of paper and do one final smoosh. Actually, I'm going to bring in a stencil as well. So I have a little bit, I went real heavy and I picked up a lot of that shaving cream, and you can see that I have that beautiful soft pastel background. And then I'm going to add my stencil right here, add my paper over the top, and I'm going to get a really nice impression on the top half of the paper, and the bottom half is kind of missing the stencil. So now we're moving on to building our cards. I didn't want this panel to go to waste, even though it didn't have a lot of the pattern on there. So I did use the Tim Holtz Fragments leaf, and I took 2 of the larger leaves and I cut out the panel. Now this is the glossy cardstock. You can kind of see it right there. I'm going to add a little bit of shaded lilac around the edges, and then I'll come in with some Villainous Potion. And when I bring that Villainous Potion in, I really like the look of that. So I am going to add a little bit more of that shaded lilac to the second leaf so that I have a little bit stronger of a color combination. There, I accidentally used the wrong brush, but I was able to clean out that pad, and so it didn't harm anything. I'm going to trim this panel down to 4 by 5¼ inches, and I have a 4¼ by 5½ inch top folding card base. I felt like just adding the leaves to this would be a little bit plain because there was still that white space at the bottom of my piece of my shaving cream panel, and so I did cut this frame out using 2 of my rectangle dies, and I added a little bit of foam tape to the back of that, and this is just going to add a little bit more interest. I've added some foam tape to one of my leaves, and then to the second leaf I only added just regular double-sided tape. I'm going to adhere this to my background. Now I do, hindsight's 20/20. I wish I would have pushed this down just a little bit further. So I wish my leaves were down towards the bottom just a little bit more, but I still think that the card came out pretty. I stamped my sentiment onto a piece of cardstock using some of that Villainous Potion ink, and then I added some foam tape to the back of that, and that will finish off my first card. Oh, nope, I'm sorry. I added some sequins here, so I did add about, I think, 3 sequins at the top and 3 sequins at the bottom. These are some, I think, from Pretty Pink Posh. I've had these in my stash for quite a while. So there's a look at that finished card. And now we're going to move on. This is the Magnolia flower from Janis Makola. It comes with an outline, and then there is also, so this is going to cut solid, and you can see that I'm just trying to put it on my patterns so that I get the most out of the mixture of the pinks and the yellows. So I cut it out from 2 different panels. And then my favorite number to layer images is 3. So there are 3 of the detailed magnolias that I cut out of white cardstock, and I'm going to adhere it to my shaving cream panel. And I really love the look of this card. Yellow, yellow used to not be one of my favorite colors, but I really love yellow combinations, especially in spring. I have the Lemon Whip ink pad from Pink Fresh Studio, and then I have a piece of cardstock that I have cut out using one of my layering dies, and I inked up the side that was going to depress so that I have a little bit darker of an image where the embossing folder was, and it's going to show up just a little bit more in the background. My finished card is going to be 8½ by 3½ inches. I did add another layer using the same pink cardstock from my card base, and I like the way that those two colors really work together with my shaving cream background. I'm going to add one of the magnolias at the bottom, and then I'll use my Tim Holtz guillotine trimmer to trim off the edges that are hanging over the side. I'll use the second image that I cut. So this is another magnolia that I put together using one of those other panels, and I'm going to glue it to the top, and then I'll trim that down as well. I have my sentiment that's going to come from the Birthday Blooms stamp and die set from the Greetery, and I am going to I off screen cut out the sentiment, but I want to fit my stamps in the center. This really helps me line them up much easier. So I took the negative piece, and now I'm going to insert my positive die cuts. I did cut these out again 3 times each. So I cut the happy out 3 times and the birthday 3 times. I'm going to layer up the white cardstock twice, and then of course I'll add my stamped sentiment over the top. So I did use that Lemon Whip ink from Pink Fresh Studio, and once I adhere this to my slimline card, that will finish my cards for today. So I hope you give this technique a try. I'm definitely going to do this again. I have some really nice ideas, different color combinations that I would like to use, plus I have a full container of shaving cream that I can still use. If you liked this video, please make sure to give it a big thumbs up. Let me know what you think of this technique if you've ever tried it yourself. And until next time, I hope you have a fabulous day. Thanks for joining. Me.